neonatal reflexes. This is to check if your child has a normal development. Yay! This is a series of tests that might shock you and the baby. But rest assured, your baby is in safe hands. Yay!
Flexor withdrawal reflex is the first spinal reflex. Its stimulus is a noxious stimulus to the sole of the foot, and it is tested in supine or sitting position. In response, the toes extend, the foot dorsiflexes, and the entire lower extremity flexes uncontrollably. Crossed extension. It requires a noxious stimulus to the ball of the foot of the lower extremity fixed in extension. In response, the opposite lower extremity flexes, then adducts and extends. Traction reflex. As a stimulus, grasp the forearm and pull from supine into sitting position. As a response, the baby grasps and exhibits total flexion of upper extremity. Grasp stimulus. It is maintained pressure to the palm of the hand for palmar grasp or to the ball of the foot under the toes for plantar grasp. In response, there is a maintained flexion of the fingers or toes. Rooting reflex. It is stimulated by stroking the perioral region. In response, the head turns to the stimulated side with the mouth opening. Babinski reflex. It is stimulated by stroking the plantar surface of the foot from heel to big toe. In response, there is big toe extension and fanning of other toes. Landau reflex. The infant is held in ventral suspension for the stimulus, and in response, there is an extension of the neck, trunk, and hips. Moreau reflex is stimulated by a sudden change in the position of head in relation to trunk. Its response is the extension, abduction of the upper extremities, hands opening and crying, followed by flexion, adduction of arms across the chest. Startle reflex is stimulated by sudden loud or harsh noise. Its response is a sudden extension or abduction of the upper extremities and crying. Asymmetrical tonic neck flexion, stimulated by the rotation of the head to one side. In response, there is a flexion of the skull limbs and the extension of the jaw limb. Symmetrical tonic neck reflex, a stimulation by flexion or extension of the head. In response, with the head flexion, flexion of the upper extremities and extension of the lower extremities. With the head in extension, extension of the upper extremities and flexion of the lower extremities. Symmetrical tonic labyrinthine is stimulated by a prone or supine position. The response with prone is increased flexor tone or flexion of all limbs. With supine is an increased extensor tone or extension of all limbs. Positive supporting is stimulated by the contact to the ball of the foot in the upright standing position. In response, there is a rigid extension of the legs. Associated reflex is stimulated by resisted voluntary movement in any part of the body. In response, there is involuntary movement in a resting extremity. Body writing reaction acting on head is stimulated by contact of the body with a solid surface. In response, there is head writing in respect to gravity. Body writing reaction acting on body is stimulated by rotation of the thorax to one side. In response, there is rolling over with rotation between trunk and pelvis. Optical and labyrinthine writing stimulated by tilting the body. In response, the head orients to a vertical position. Protective extensor thrust is stimulated by a quick displacement of the trunk in a downward direction while held or while sitting in forward, sideward, or backward direction. Its response is an extension of the legs downward and extension of the arms. Tilting reactions is stimulated by slow shifting of the base of support in space. Its response is a lateral flexion of the spine towards the elevated side of support, abduction of the extremities on the elevated side, and sometimes trunk rotation toward the elevated side.